All right, greetings and thank you for joining us at futuremoneytrends.com. I have a special interview for you guys today. We're going to talk about the cannabis market with probably the most sophisticated and talented entrepreneur in the entire space that I've ever met. And we've been researching companies, going to conferences for nearly 2 years now. And it's hard to find the great people in this business because this business is new. It's still messy. For the most part, just the attorneys are making money, to be honest with you. But our guest today, he is the CEO and chairman of Invictus. It trades on the TSX Venture under IMH and in the US under IVITF. And they are the first and only cannabis company to pay out a dividend. And it was a massive dividend, 17.5%. They have a focus on cannabis production, managing and operating several facilities in Canada. They have a diversified portfolio of assets, again, all in Canada, including the largest acreage for cultivation, as demand is expected to increase with full recreational legalization starting in Canada in July 1st. They'll be able to ramp up production. And again, one of the most successful and sophisticated entrepreneurs I've ever met. And we're here to talk to him today about what just happened in the U.S. with Jeff Sessions, the repeal of that memo that was in the Obama administration, as well as what's happening in the 2018 cannabis market in North America. Our guest today, Dan Kriznic. Dan, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. I know you have a heavy travel schedule and you're running a Invictus, so appreciate you taking a moment to talk to us. Let's start off with what just happened in the last 24 hours, really, because these cannabis stocks, specifically in the United States, were flying. Some of them up 200-300% just in the last week of December. And then Jeff Sessions repeals this memo. First of all, let's talk about what the effects of that are in your opinion. And then also, I think people should understand and realize that this affected all the cannabis stocks. So even if you have nothing to do with the United States, they all got hit, which also presents quite an opportunity for investors. So what exactly did Jeff Sessions do, and what is the impact?
Yeah, so Jeff Sessions, basically there was a memo called the Cole memo that was issued during the Obama administration that Jeff Sessions now said that he would be rescinding. And basically, what's interesting about the Cole memo is that it was not federal law, and it didn't really alter the Justice Department's authority or discretion to enforce the laws, which kind of continues after the Cole memo was adopted in 2013. So by him saying now that we're going back and we're taking this off the table, it doesn't really change anything. It doesn't change the views that the Attorney General can prosecute individuals in states where marijuana programs are legal. I think it was something that was done by Jeff Sessions to basically downplay a little bit of the hype that was happening with California becoming legal and becoming the biggest market in the world. And he didn't want to see that was going to have a significant positive impact. So he came out very quickly with this memo indicating that they would no longer have the Cole memo in place. But in terms of the impact, kind of your second question, of impact in the Canadian space, it definitely doesn't impact anybody in Canada. If anything, the U.S. market, we have nothing to do with the U.S. market up in Canada. We're listed on the TSX Venture, which doesn't even permit us to have any assets in the U.S. and cannabis-related companies. So, I think the market reacted yesterday to the memo, but not really in an educated fashion, because if it was an educated fashion, the market would know that, look, this is an impact in the Canadian guys. And I think all the Canadian stocks rebounded quite quickly as a result of people really understanding what is happening. Going forward, I think that what's happening in the U.S. is going to be very difficult to determine whether there is any change as a result of Jeff Sessions coming out with this statement. Right now, the Cole memo was really intended to be in place to indicate, as I said earlier, not by law, but to really indicate whether states that have proper policies and procedures in place, that the federal government would not prosecute individuals operating under those policies and guidelines within the legal states, whether it be for recreational purposes, adult use, or whether it be for medicinal. And what we've found is that, to date, nothing has been significant to come out in terms of various prosecutions in the states that have all these proper policies and procedures in place.
Well, it's interesting. He basically gave it back to the U.S. prosecutors, and I just watched, and I'll probably place it into this interview, but there is a video of President-elect Trump talking about this topic, and he makes it very clear that it's a state rights issue, state by state, and that they will not prosecute. So it's interesting that his AG did that, but it's almost kind of like the Cole memo said they weren't going to prosecute at all. And now he's saying basically puts it back into the hands of the U.S. prosecutor in that state, which I don't think anybody in California or Colorado, I think the Colorado U.S. attorneys already come out and said they're absolutely not going to change anything.
I want to drill down on a couple Colorado issues. So Chris Christie was one of the first sort of establishment guys to really jump in with both feet for you. He gets talked about as a possible AG pick, but he was also the only presidential candidate who was campaigning saying he would use federal authority to shut down sales of recreational marijuana in states like Colorado.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that, no.
You wouldn't let him?
No.
Even if you picked him as
Well,
AG?
I don't know. I mean, you're asking me. I wouldn't do that, no.
Yeah. So you think Colorado should be able to do what it's doing?
No, I think it's up to the states, yeah. I'm a states person. I think it should be up to the states, absolutely.
So, but on the flip side, this does make it harder for institutions to invest in the United States cannabis market, which would only create more demand for money to flow into the Canadian space. So let's pivot and talk about Invictus and what you guys are doing in Canada, because you guys have no assets in the United States, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So the Canadian landscape, I think, would technically benefit from an issue like this, because eventually, if Canada, or not if, but when Canada becomes fully recreational come July, and that's already all been tabled and it's coming to fruition, and we are medical right now across the country, federally legal. So we don't have issues with banks. Everything is above board, and we are the first G7 country to fully legalize from an adult use perspective come this July. Having competition, in the United States, it doesn't really exist now because the U.S. continues to be federally illegal. It does bring benefit to the Canadian landscape in the sense that, we can continuously not only domestically provide significant returns to our shareholders for providing product and a significant demand domestic, but also international. And we've seen the international landscape start to explode. Germany is coming out there, coming to Canada, best practices. How are you guys growing? What can we learn from you? Because we've been in Canada very proactive for a number of years now, providing proper policies and procedures and making sure that everything is completely above board and operating the way that the government wants it to operate. So definitely from Invictus perspective, right now we have two licenses and an application for a third to produce under Health Canada's regime, and that gives us the opportunity on province specific, one in Alberta and one in Ontario, with a very large footprint in terms of acreage. We have about 250 acres of footprint that we can build square footage on, and we're in the process of building expansion as we speak. We have about $25 million in cash in the bank right now, which is a healthy cash position to allow us to build on these expansion facilities and really gear up for this rec market that's coming in July. That's right now, we've heard numbers of 750,000 kilo demand and only having about 200,000 of supply. So we think that there's going to be a big shortage coming to this recreational market. There's more and more licenses that are being approved under the Health Canada regime, but the licenses are getting approved. It takes time before you can be ready for actual sales. It takes typically right now is about a 12-month turnaround between getting your cultivation license and then going into a sales type scenario. So getting ready for the recreational market that's coming up in this July, people that are just getting licensed today in Canada still won't be ready for actually selling product into the demand that's going to be coming up quite quickly here.
Yeah, and I would suggest subscribers take positions now, specifically in the Canadian market over the next 3-4 months here, because it is funny, all these California cannabis stocks that all of them are listed in Canada anyway, but the ones that are doing business in California, they all shot up like 200-300% going into the legalization, but like 5 days before. Meanwhile, you can buy these amazing companies right now, and the full recreational legalization goes on July 1. So by you position yourself now and just wait a few months, I mean, I have to imagine around July 1st, and this is just my opinion, a lot of these Canadian cannabis companies are going to be going vertical because, again, the first G7 nation to allow this. And Canada is going to set the precedence for a lot of these other countries. And I think between Colorado, California, and what's going to happen in Canada, I think the stigma of this is behind us, really. And if you look at polls, anybody under 50, overwhelming majority, and actually Americans as a whole in the U.S. support this. So, and obviously Canadians have already made it legal. So, Dan, let's just close out 2018 cannabis market. What are your thoughts on? Let's specifically talk about the advancements in the U.S. and the advancements in Canada. If you could just wrap this up for us.
For sure, yeah. So 2018 is going to be a big year, big in terms of North America. On the side of the U.S., we're going to find more and more kind of information coming out of the market, whether it's from Jeff Sessions and his group on what they want to do there in terms of prosecution. I can't really see it happening. I think that practically speaking, the tens of thousands, if not more, of job creation and the tax dollars, I just can't see the prosecution happening at that state level if they're following the rules. So I just see explosive growth in California. We're going to see numbers that nobody's ever really talked about before. This is not what people have called before a dot-com bubble kind of thing. This is reality. This is something that has been in place for generations, and it's just now legalizing it and putting money into a lot of tax dollars back into the system, which is great and very, very positive. And then in the North and Canada, again, it's going to be a breakthrough year, something that we've never seen before in terms of recreational in a first G7 country. And the explosive growth is going to happen with all the demand that we see coming down the pipeline. Is going to be amazing for companies like ourselves at Invictus. And we're one of the front runners out here. We're ready to sell. We're ready for these rec guys coming in and the demand coming in. So at this stage, we think that Invictus is still a very good value if you look at our total production capacity and what we can provide to the market and the kind of numbers that we're going to be generating in terms of revenue and positive cash flows. So we're geared up and ready to go, and really looking forward to the next kind of 6 to 7 months as we go recreational.
Yeah, and anybody listening to this, you can save yourself a lot of drama if you're invested in the Canadian companies doing business in Canada. Everything, it's going to be fully legal on July 1st, and it's heavily supported by the Canadian people. So you'll save yourself a lot of drama what's going to happen in the United States. And again, I'm not opposed to investing in companies doing business in the U.S. because we actively are looking to participate in some. But it's going to be very messy. In Canada, I think it's going to be much smoother. And again, you're looking at the end of a prohibition here. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Dan Kriznic, Chairman and CEO of Invictus. Again, they trade on the TSX Venture under IMH and in the U.S. under IVITF. Dan, thanks again for being on the show with us today.
It's great. Thanks for having me.